Hello, I'm Steph from iDriver Classic, and it is of course our Christmas special, and there was only one car that was going to fit the bill this year for the Christmas special. It was Kev's MGC. Now I know that we've not shown you all the restoration videos yet, we've got plenty more to come, but I had to show you this car in time for Christmas, and Kev was so passionate to show you all at home, he was up until 3 a.m. this morning finishing it off, which is quite a mean feat indeed, and we're very lucky to be seeing it out on the road because there were less than 10,000 of these ever made. In fact, I think it was 8,999 to be precise in one of the MG books I was reading, which means that seeing one of these out on the road today is quite a rare treat indeed. Now in today's video, we're going to do as we do with all our videos, and if you've never watched one before, you're in for a treat. We're going to have a look around the car, get under that bonnet, have a look at that straight six engine. We're going to take it out for a drive and have a look through the interior as well. Lots to look forward to. So many thousands of hours have gone into this car. So without further delay, let me introduce you to Kev's MGC. MG were onto a winner with their MGB, brought to market in 1962, and they were keen to keep the audience enthralled with both MG and their sports car offerings, especially the overseas markets, places like North America, where MG was a popular, highly regarded brand. There was also the issue of finding a replacement for the Austin Healey 3000, which makes it a rival of the MGC at Earl's Court Motor Show in 1967, no surprise. Although there was initially talk of a bit of badge engineering to create a Healey-fronted version of the new MGC. However, Donald Healey came in and he just said, well, I'm not keen on that, completely rejected it, and then it meant that the 3000 wasn't really replaced at all. So that leaves the market in 67, and then this comes in. However, if you know much about the Austin Healey 3000, you'll know that I think the power is either equal to or just slightly above the MGC, which, by the way, the press absolutely loved ripping. However, none of this meant that the audience were disinterested in the car. In fact, the car was a massive step up on the MGB with that B series engine, and it now offered a 2912cc engine, which was a 3-litre straight six, delivering 145 brake horsepower with a top speed of 120 miles per hour. Now, those critics were back in again, and they argued that this just wasn't fast enough, and the acceleration wasn't dramatic enough to draw in the speed demons. But in fact, it is worth noting that it was one of the fastest production MGs that had been built at the time of it coming to market. Now, there were also complaints about the new engine giving such pronounced change in the weight distribution that it made the car a bit of a chore to drive, and gone was the weighting of 52.5% and 47.5% as seen in the MGB, because the MGC had a weight distribution of 55.7 against 44.3. And now, whilst it does feel slightly different when you're driving it, it certainly doesn't make the drive feel displeasing. But that's the thing, isn't it? People love reading bad news. And so therefore, if there's a little something like this, sometimes people really cling to it, coupled with people take it too far on a test drive, of course. Now, if you're wondering why they chose the engine they did, a lot of it was down to how far the company would go with structural alterations to the car. Because remember, every alteration costs money, and they don't really want to be spending too much, because by the end of the 60s and into the early 70s, we're facing that time where everyone's in a wee bit of trouble. Now, you do see some of these changes automatically as soon as you look at the car, things like that bonnet design, which I'll talk to you about later, but others are more apparent once you open that bonnet, with the removable crossmember on the B being replaced by extensions to the inner wing arches to create new U-shaped crossmember, which does add to the safety somewhat because it adds additional strengthening to the body shell. There's also new suspension to replace the coil spring and lever arm damper set that you'd seen on the MGB, and there are various other small tweaks here and there. Gearbox wise, this is good. A new one is developed for the car, and it's got synchro on all forward gears, which you do see me promptly forget when I start the car. So this is just a reminder that you do have synchro on all for forward gears and reverse. Now, that's coupled with a higher torque capacity as well. There is also the optional Laycock overdrive, which works on the 2 top gears and is fitted to this car. And I'll show you that a little bit when we go out. Now, running in favour of the car, because I've pulled up a lot of the negatives that people mentioned at the time, the costs were very reasonable. And when it came to market, the car was In 1967, the car was priced at £1,102 for the Roadster and £1,249 for the GT. Sadly, despite all the development care and everything else that went into it, the car came into a climate which was totally different to the one it had started in as a concept. Because guess what? Everything merges and it's now part of the British Leyland family. And that Triumph TL6, which was once a competitor, was now a stablemate. And this meant one of them had to go to avoid cannibalising sales. And the TL6 sales were so strong, especially overseas, and with it being the dominant model, it meant that the MGC just wasn't destined to be the star it deserved to be, which meant that just 2 years after launch, in 1967, the car was retired off in 1969, with less than 10,000 built in total. What a shame for such a beautiful car. Coming inside this MGC, it feels wonderfully familiar, and not because I've ever driven an MGC, but because it is so closely related to that MGB from which it came. And you come inside here, and again, the MGB, I personally think, has just such a wonderful layout. Everything is exactly where you need it to be, and you feel that coming through in here as well. So over on the left, as you'd expect, you've got the map light coming into the glove box. Again, enough space that you would be expecting in this GT, but not enormous. But then again, remember, everything is very slimline, it feels very elegant, it's not enormously bulky, because that's not what you want. Coming into the centre here, you've got your heater controls just here and here, and then in the middle you come through into this classic Motorola radio. Now this, as you can see here,
pounds in exactly the same way the retailer, no matter where you bought it in the
is working. I mean, I didn't tune it that well because look, we can't put music on it, but I wanted to show you just what it sounded like, and that is connected to this. So the speaker is down here. So it's the original speaker down there. I love original details like that. Coming over from here, you've got your heater. I keep forgetting because they're just so similar. So you've got your heater controls just here, and look, if you are getting into one of these and you think the heater's not that clever, you would be right. They're not enormously powerful, but bearing in mind, if we think about cars of the era, no heater was particularly spectacular, so we'll accept that. Coming over from there, you've got your wipers, and then you've got your window washers, you've got your key, and you've got your choke, and then just here you've got a split gauge. So at the top you've got your oil pressure and you've got your water temperature there as well. I cannot stress, if you drive a classic car and you haven't got one of these fitted, retrospectively, if you didn't get one from the manufacturer, just go and fit one, because the amount of times that my bacon has been saved by one of these being in one of my Morris Minors, oh my goodness, they are just fantastic. Because if your head gasket goes or something has gone a little bit astray, you'll spot it on there well before you get any of the telltale signs that really are going to end up costing you a lot of money through damage. Anyway, I've gone wildly off on a tangent. Coming into the front of you here, this is what I love. I loved it about the MGB, and hey, look, I love it about the MGC too. It's this wonderfully simplistic dash layout. Now over to the left hand side you've got your speedo, as I was mentioning before, runs up to 140, top speed 120, 0 to 60 in 10 seconds. Love that. By the way, we've been out for a drive in it already, and thank goodness I didn't see any speed cameras, because I don't think that we would be mixing well today. Over on the right hand side you've got a rev counter, exactly as you would expect, because we are in a very sexy sports car. And then coming over from there you've got your fuel gauge, and I don't want to know how much fuel we're using because we're having fun, and sometimes life is all about miles per gallon, not miles per gallon, but it's that low, at best mid-20s mark. And then coming over from here you've got your overdrive switch. Now you've got it on normal or overdrive, and Kev said to me when he put this together, he said, I don't really know if it works or not, but I'm going to put it together, see if it does, and go from there. And whilst you'll see when we go out for a drive, it is a little bit less responsive than I thought it might be, but only by a smidgen, it's still very much working. Gearbox, synchro, on all forward gears, I think. I can't remember because I'll remind myself when we go out driving, but it's 4 forward gears on this and reverse. Your handbrake is just here, and of course we have got the ashtray, because the discerning driver of this era would have definitely probably had a ciggy on the go, because it just feels like the kind of car where someone would have been a little bit naughty, they would have had a ciggy on the go, would have been like pure sex appeal. Do you know what I mean? It is just so much more, isn't it, than just a sports car. And I'll tell you what I really like about this. And I feel like it's probably a bit of a Marmite feature, and I want to know what you think at home, is that bulge across the top of the bonnet. And the thing I really love is that teardrop shape. Now, of course, that is for that front carb, isn't it? But what I like about it, for me, is that they didn't just raise the whole bonnet up that much. They've just gone with that little section. And I quite like it, because I think it's just almost unapologetically saying, yeah, there's a lot going on under here. Bet you'd like to have a look. And it's all just there. I love that. I think it's really great. I think a lot of people that love a streamlined shape will probably argue the case with me that they don't like it, but personal taste is personal taste, isn't it? Now, in terms of the interior, these front seats have been retrimmed by Kev. If the video hasn't gone live yet, there's a video coming on that, and the back seat is original. So you can see, you know, when we were looking at them earlier, you can really see how good these Newton commercials, the seat covers are, because they so closely mirror the original pattern. I don't think you can see the difference, and for me that's the sign of a good retrim. But when I start seeing all these retrims that are just a bit sloppy and don't follow the original lines, it's when it loses its magic for me. We have got a Webasto roof in, however I feel the cold so horrendously, just so horrendously, that we're not going to be opening that up today, but we do acknowledge that that's up there. Now, Kev did something really interesting when he put the headlining in this. He actually took a headlining out of a scrap MGB, cut it down to size and fitted it around the Webasto. Ingenuity like that is to always be valued, because you think, well, the car may have been scrapped, all the good parts were taken off it, of course, but it was really only the very bare bones that get scrapped, and even these little bits have been reused. The more that we can reuse and the less that we make new, all the better for it. Now, as I did say earlier, Kev did only finish his car at 3 AM and the door cappings are still to go on. But look, I just really wanted to show you this car. We wanted to get it over the line. So without further delay, let me start the car up for you. Now, I was talking to you about that engine when we were walking around, trying to get my feet in the right position. And we have got that straight six under the bonnet. Now have a listen, because it is so good. Turn that heater off. Oh my God. Just wait for it. It's the fact that the whole car shakes when you do it. It's magic. Absolutely love it. Now, I want to take you out on a test drive, but first of all, let's get that back end shot as well, because I want you to hear it from the tailpipe so you can really feel that straight six magic. Right, let's go on an adventure. You can probably tell it's not my first rodeo in this car, because me and this car now are like this. It is, it is sex on four wheels. It is the best sports car I have ever driven, and I've driven an E-Type and I'm enjoying this more because this feels obtainable. I feel like we could all get one of these. This is just great and I adore it. Now, if you've never driven one of these and you've heard all the stories where people go, oh, they understeer, it's really heavy at the front. Look, I'm here to tell you that a lot of people's viewpoints are based on road tests from the time. Well, there were so many things that MG just maybe didn't get quite right, but that's okay because we've learned through the passing of time on how to get things so much more right. So one of the things that they didn't do, or apparently did do at the time, was they fitted MGB tyres to these, which didn't really work. It was a particular type of Dunlop, and then they didn't inflate them all the way and things went wrong, and journalists got cocky because they got a straight six and it was all very sexy and magical and everybody wanted to rag it, and A lot of people tank them, and so then they got this reputation for understeer and being really front heavy. Now, I was talking to you about the weight distribution, and of course there is like that 5% difference from the MGB, which is really caused mostly by the weight of that engine. So the engine in this is 209 pounds heavier than the B series that is fitted into the MGB. And a lot of people might say, well, what does that straight six give you? I'm going to tell you, it gives you the most exhilarating ride that you could ever hope for. I didn't really get the buzz for this when Kev was building it. Like, I thought, it's just a spicy MGB, which makes me a terrible person. But I never let on that I was like, yeah, it's just spicy MGB. No. It's in a whole class of its own. It's the noise from the engine. It's the fact that you are so close to the engine and you can hear everything, that you are fully immersed in the experience. And that, for me, is what true classic car driving is all about. It's about being at one with that engine, the driving experience, and having a blooming great time while you're doing it. Now, what is it like to drive this? Well, first of all, the understeer, let's talk about that. I'm really not feeling it. I mean, yeah, I've spent years in a marina, so understeer is like second nature for me. But look, I'm really not feeling it. And I think a lot of this comes down to driving technique. People just sometimes just get a little bit cocky when they start driving and think that they know it all before they've really got to know the car. It's about respect for the motor vehicle that you're driving and really getting into the swing of it before you try and push it to its limits. If you get into a car and try and push it to its limits straight away, you're going to run out of luck. Whereas this, I've been feeling it into the corners, working out how it responds, and then picking up my pace as I go and getting a little bit more confident with it. Now, for me, the things I like about this, number one, the noise from the engine. I could not care if it did 10 miles per gallon. The noise from the engine brings it alive for me, and I think it's marvellous. The next thing is the steering and the handling, really responsive, but also really light. Now, I've been quite a few MGBs, and I've found that actually they have been or felt a lot heavier than this has done. This feels remarkably light, and I just really wasn't expecting it. I thought it was going to feel just a lot more heavy going, really. And as we come through, I do find the gearbox a bit notchy. I don't know if maybe the clutch needs a bit of adjustment. But overall, it is such a remarkable little thing to be driving, and I am thoroughly enjoying it, and I think you would as well. And the greatest thing about these is, for me, is there is so much support, because it's very easy to jump into an old sports car, right? And it's quite easy to buy into a lot of them because prices at the moment are a little bit all over the place, and especially on some of your higher end stuff, they seem to have dropped. But it's all very well and good buying into it, but what keeps the passion alive and what keeps the fun going is club and parts support. Now, I've got to know MGOC and MGOC spares over the years because I used to work for Lancaster and I knew them through that, and I'd sourced my parts through them. And whilst we've been on this project, we have sourced all the parts for this through MGOC spares, and blimey, the quality has been absolutely brilliant. And that's because MGC spares really give a damn about where they source their stuff from and the quality of the parts that they're sending out to customers, which means you, as the end customer, get an enjoyable experience. Because as many of you know, I now work in a classic garage, and so I see parts for different vehicles coming in, and not all of them are up to the same calibre. So when you get to work on a car, like I've worked on this with Kev, and you get to use nice quality parts that go on easily, they don't break after 5 minutes, you develop a greater appreciation for both the parts and the parts supplier. So well done MGOC, because you're making owning one of these an absolute pleasure. They're also really good as well because you can ring them and ask them technical questions, as Kev has done all the way through. And we've spoken to Chris at MGOC Spares, and he's just been an absolute mine of information. So that's kind of the driving experience, really. I've really loved this in a way that I wasn't expecting. I thought I was going to enjoy it, but I didn't think I was going to love it. This truly feels like a car that you could jump on into, you could take to the ends of the earth and still want more at the end. And that, for me, is what makes it a brilliant car. You've got plenty of space around you. I'm 5'3", so if you're watching this and you're also a petite person and you're thinking, am I going to be able to roll the seat forward? You'll be absolutely fine. Like you will not struggle at all. And remember, there are always workarounds. So if you ever see a car that you love and you think, oh, I can't get the seat forward enough, go and see somebody and just get some extra holes put in the floor and just get it pushed forward. There are always ways to work around these things, especially for a car of this caliber. Now, what don't I like? Apart from that gear change that's a little bit notchy, there's nothing that really stands out for me where I think, not really that keen. I have truly loved the entire experience because I enjoy an MGB, but getting into this and having that straight six under the bonnet, knowing that if I wanted to, I could put my foot down and do 120 miles per hour. Well, that for me, that's just everything. And I have really, really enjoyed it. I wish Kev all the luck in the world with this car. He deserves all the fun in the world with it because he has put so many hours and so much money into it, and now that I've driven it and now that I've experienced it firsthand, I can see that it was worth every penny and every minute spent. Now, I hope you've enjoyed our Christmas special looking at the MGC. It's been a pleasure to share it with you. It's been a pleasure to spend another year with you on the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it more than you could ever imagine, because without all of you watching at home, I wouldn't get to live my dream and share it all with you. Now, it's time for me to head on home. I had hoped to put my foot down, but I have been rudely blocked by a tractor. But hey, that's the countryside for you. So until next time, when we meet again for something else, take care and drive safely.